to build map symbology for WebRAVE. We already have lots of symbology for ArcGIS Rave, and we are developing more symbology by the day for QRave. We have a third version of Rave now called WebRAVE. You access that from the Riverscapes data warehouse. So this is a development version. This is not the live version of the warehouse. You'll see that it's changed slightly, and we now have two sets of icons. You can download a project, or you can click the globe icon to launch WebRAVE. And this is an online browser-based viewer of a single project at a time. It's completely analogous to the desktop experience in that you have the project tree on the left-hand side, you have a map in the middle, and you can click to add layers to the map. This version of Rave does not currently have any symbology, so when I double-click this perennial drainage network, it comes in this turquoisey blue color. Those of you familiar with the desktop versions will know that we use a dark blue categorized symbology for this layer. And what we want to do is develop exactly the same cartography for WebRAVE. So this video is going to focus on taking this perennial layer and developing the categorical symbology for this particular layer. And this workflow needs to be repeated for each of the layers in our Riverscapes projects. The process for raster layers is a little different. So this video is about vector layers. And a bit cheekily, I'm not going to show you or teach you how to develop the symbology in its entirety. I'm going to focus on the workflow. So how I go from this stage, which is wanting to develop symbology, to the point where I can build the symbology, and then the bit after that where I take the symbology and load it back into WebRAVE. The middle piece is using a software called Mapbox, and there's tons of videos and online tutorials for learning Mapbox and how to build different cartographic symbols in Mapbox. I'm not going to focus on that here. All right, so the first thing I need to do is I need a little bit of sample data. I need this layer to do my demo, to upload into Mapbox so I can see it being symbolized as I work on it. So I'm going to go to the warehouse, and I'm going to download this project. So this is a particular HUC. It doesn't really matter which HUC, but the layer that you're going to work on, you should really have all of the features, examples of each of the features for each type of symbology you want in that layer. So in this case, I'm going to be symbolizing based on F code and drainage area. So I need a layer that has kind of all of the drainage area and F code examples that I want my symbology to have. So all of the symbology categories, if you like. Okay, so I'm going to double click that to expand it onto my desktop. Okay, so there we go. Now I go to QGIS, and I'm going to load that layer using QRave. This isn't essential that you use QRave, but this is going to make everybody's life a little easier. You'll see why in a second here. So I'm going to go to my Riverscapes context, and I'm showing you this on a Mac. The workflow is exactly the same on Windows. It's completely analogous. In fact, most of the work we're going to do is going to be in a web browser, so it's independent of operating system. Okay, so I've got my Riverscapes context project here in QRave, and I'm going to add that perennial layer to my map. Okay, so there it is, and that is the QRave symbology that's been developed by someone else. Deeper, darker blue lines for the perennial, and different colors for the different F codes. So this is what I'm trying to create in WebRAVE, this same cartographic symbology. So as I said, I need a sample of this data to play with. So I'm going to right-click on this layer in QGIS and go Export, Save Features As. And I'm going to save them as GeoJSON. This is a text format of geospatial data. I'm going to put this in my GIS data, my temp folder, perennial.geojson. I'm going to make sure that it's EPSG 4326, that's WGS84. You can leave everything else pretty much the same. If you do have a big shapefile, if it's a really large data set, you might consider dropping some of the attributes here in the export. You must keep the ones that you're going to want to symbolize on, but you can drop any others if you want. And pretty much everything else I can leave as it is. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So you see it saving down the bottom there, 94%, 100%. Now there is a little bit of information uh, stored in that file. Let's go look at that file now. So I'm going to go to a text editor called Visual Studio Code. I'm going to open this file. Try and open this file. GIS data, temp, GeoJSON. So you'll see it's just a text file here. Um, it's actually a very simple structure. Every row here is a different feature, and it's just literally the plain text of that feature. So another thing is, if you're, like I was saying before, if your data set is really big, you you might want to shrink the size of it to speed up the upload into Mapbox and just make it quicker to work with all around. You can also just delete some rows out of this file because every row in this table is a feature in the data set. Again, be careful to retain enough examples of each different type of feature for each symbology. Anyway, it's row 4 here that we want to delete. This is the coordinates reference system. For some reason, Mapbox struggles with that. So we're just going to delete that and save the file. Notice this is a JSON file, so we need to make sure we keep that comma there before the next key in the object, the JSON object. So try not to break the file, the format of the file. If you're unsure, there are JSON validators out there online. But it is literally as simple as removing that one line. Okay, just take that out, save it. All right, now we're going to go over to Mapbox. And so Mapbox is a commercial company that builds online web mapping solutions. Their technology is used in lots of popular websites that you've seen. And we're not actually going to use what you're putting into your Mapbox account is never going to get used here. We're just using it as a toolbox to build our symbology. So go ahead and create yourself an account and log into Mapbox Studio. If you don't, when you first log in, if you don't see Studio, you can click on the little down arrow by your account icon, and Studio should be one of the options there, which will bring you to this screen like I have here. All right, then we're going to click on the styles on the top here. I'm actually already there. What we're building is a new cartographic style for my layer, and I'm going to click New Style. And you can start off with any one of these existing styles if you want, but I'm going to start with a blank template. And once you get into the style editor here, we're going to switch over to layers, and we're going to click the plus icon to upload a layer. And we need some source data on which we're going to style our data, on which we're going to style our cartography. So we're going to click this upload data, and you can drag your GeoJSON file into this box if you want. I'm actually going to browse out to it. There's my perennial GeoJSON. I'm going to confirm it. Notice that it's a 2 megabyte file. You can see the approximate speed of it coming up here. This is where I was talking about. This will go a lot faster if you if you omit certain features or attributes from your data set. Now, just while that's processing, I'll just explain. Web cartography is done extremely differently. It's totally different than desktop cartography. Um, the way you build a style is by stacking different graphical elements on top of each other. So if you want for polygons, you're going to need to add a style element that is the fill, then another layer on top of that, which will be the outline. And then if you want labels, that's another layer. And so you're going to stack all of these things up to come up with your style. All right, that should become clear in a second here. So you'll notice here that my style has been called Pip Bailey 70p with this funny code. I'll just make sure you remember that. I think actually it's letting me give me a copy feature there because now I can go into my data set and in this list, it's right here. I can see there is there is the style that I just added, and you see it come in here on the left. Now, before I do anything else, I'm actually going to come in here and I'm going to I want to add another layer in here. This is a new layer, and for this source, I'm going to pick the Mapbox satellite layer. All right, and I'm going to drag that underneath my perennial. We're not going to keep this in our style, but it's super helpful. First of all, it's just helpful to see on the screen where you are in the world, but also it's going to help you develop a cartography that contrasts nicely with any underlying um, underlying satellite image that we commonly have on our um, WebRAVE web maps. All right, so um, this is, and don't worry about the kind of weird features here. That's a kind of GeoJSON artifact here. Now I can start to play with the cartography that I have here, and I can do everything that line. I can filter out features. I can set the zoom extent that this layer should become visible or disappear. And I can actually come in and select the styling of this layer. I can change the color of it. I can do change all of the attributes of the symbology. Okay. And you'll see that the changes that I'm making here are being reflected in the map after I make the changes. All right, so as I said, I'm not going to go through Mapbox user interface. The Mapbox documentation and help is excellent, and you should go and learn how to use Mapbox Studio to achieve the cartography that you want. But let's say that I finished styling my layer now. What I want to do now, one not super important, but this style that I'm developing is going to persist in your Mapbox account. Like I said, WebRAVE won't use your account or use the styling in your account, but it's going to sit here. And so it might be helpful, just click the little pen icon and give this a meaningful name, Perennial NHD. So a month from now, if you have to come back in or someone asks you to tweak this styling, when you come back into your Mapbox account, you'll be able to find this layer and just go on and continue styling it from where you left off. If you just leave it with the name blank, you'll never know what it is and it will be hard to find in the future. Okay, so we've got our style and now we want to get it into WebRAVE. So we're going to come top right now over here on the share button. And really important up here, you need to switch off of the production screen and go to the draft screen. And now this is going to let you download a zip file of your style. All right, so again, switch off of production, make sure you're on draft, and don't download this zip file. Where is this going? I'm going to put this in my temp folder again. Perennial draft, save it there. Okay, that's come down. It should be a pretty small file. Where am I here? GIS data. temp, there's my zip file. So I'm going to double click that to expand that zip archive. Puts it in a folder for me. And this is the all-important file, this style.json. So let's go look and see what that is. I'm going to close my data here. And here's that same folder. There's that style.json. Going to open it up. Basically, this is an export of everything that you build in Mapbox. So this is going to have all of the styling, and there's a lot of information in here. You don't have to know. You don't have to know much about it. We only need a portion of this file, and it's actually, go find the key in the JSON object called layers. The key has quotes around it, a colon, and then the object itself. And in this case, it's an array of items, so it has square brackets. And we need those square brackets, but we don't need anything else. So you'll see what's in here is basically, here are my two layers. It's got the perennial layer, and it's got the Mapbox satellite. If I had done more cartography, if I'd have added more details, this object might be a lot longer than this. It could have a lot of information in it. So we're going to go and copy that, including the square brackets. We're going to create a new file, and we're going to paste in that content. Now notice here, here's the Mapbox satellite item for my style, and here's the perennial network. We don't need this Mapbox satellite, so I'm going to go and delete that. Notice I'm deleting the enclosing curly braces and the comma that separates these two objects here. And this is the WebRAVE style that we need. Now yours, as I said, may be a lot longer with a lot more entries. You might have multiple items in here if you have labels, or you're building multiple color ramps that overlay each other, or you're doing a categorical symbology class. So don't worry if yours is a lot longer than mine. The important thing to learn is get the square braces, put it in a new file, delete out any layers you don't want, and now we're going to save this file. And the place to save this goes in the Riverscapes XML repository. So right here, this is the Riverscapes XML folder structure. And there's those of you that have worked on Symbology for QRAVE or ArcRAVE will be familiar with this. We put these items in the Symbology folder. Here you can see the Q and Arc Symbology. I'm just going to expand QGIS. There's a shared folder in there, and there's a bunch of QML files in there. And you see here's the NHD perennial. So basically, I want to mimic that structure for the web. So I'm going to open up web. There's actually nothing in web right now. So I'm going to create a folder called shared, and I'm going to call my file exactly the same thing as the Symbology for other versions of Rave, but with a JSON file suffix. So I'm going to go into web. I'm going to create a new folder here called shared. I'm inside shared now, and the file that I'm going to call this is nhdperennial.json. File capitalization, it is case sensitive. Okay. And so let's just go back to Finder or Windows Explorer here. So over here, this is on the right-hand side here, this is the XML repository here. So again, I've got the Esri, the QJS, and here's the web. There's shared, and there's NHD perennial. And remember that the name of this file has to match up with the Symbology key from the business logic for this type of project. In this case, it's NHD perennial, all lowercase, no underscores or spaces, .json. So I'm done for this layer now. I need to commit this to GitHub on a feature branch, call it something sensible like WebRAVE Symbology, NHD perennial, push that up and ask for Matt Reimer's review. Make sure that the only changes in that git commit and push are the symbology. And you can, if you want to do multiple cartographic symbologies in the same push, you can. Okay, so that is a demo on how to produce cartography or vector cartography for layers for WebRAVE.